Okej, dzień dobry ponownie ze zgrupowania w Wałbrzychu. Chwilę będę mówił po polsku, to jest Studio Adrom, a to jest Mike Taylor.
Dzień dobry.
Dzień dobry, ale będziemy rozmawiać po angielsku, a potem spróbujemy dołożyć jakieś napisy na dole. So, Mike, first, how many days of the practice already?
5 first week.
Five,
So
first
started on Monday and
How
today
is
is
it?
Friday.
How is it? How excited you are?
Oh, I'm loving it. Really enjoying the situation. The players are working really hard. I'm impressed with their focus and their effort and their attitude. We've made a lot of progress with our system, with our conditioning. I think everybody understands there's big goals ahead, there's big challenges ahead, and everybody's really working towards them. So I'm really pleased with the team. I'm pleased with the staff. And we're really working hard to be, really ready for China.
Is this the same machine that we had for the last few years, or your experience in Hamburg changed your system, or you tried to do something more? Maybe you had less time to think about it when you played Bundesliga too.
Yeah, I think that both Hamburg and Poland, we've been successful last year with the same system, very similar system. It's the core of our national team right now, and we tweak it, make minor adjustments here and there, but the base of it's the same. And I think this has been one of the strengths throughout the qualifications. And the guys are very comfortable with it. It emphasizes the team, it emphasizes ball movement, it emphasizes solid defense, and so I feel like everybody really believes in what we're doing, and we want to bring that really quality effort and great team play and teamwork to China.
Okay, the fans are always interested in personal stuff. So first of all, about players. So we've got some missing players. It's basically the first time you are the coach that we have the team without Lampe or Gortat. There were talks of both of them can be here. What happened and how you can describe the situation?
Well, for me, first of all, the most important players, are the ones that are here. They're the guys that want to be here. And I think we've seen one of the reasons we've been really successful over the last, let's say, second part of the qualifications is we found the players who put their heart into the Polish national team and really wanted to be here. And I think while we have, great players with Marcina Gortata and Macieja Lampego, Marcin retired from the national team after 2015, and people continually, hey, Marcin, come back and play. Marcin, come back. He's played a long career in the NBA. His body's kind of beaten down and worn down, so he's been clear and consistent with the fact that he doesn't want to be on the national team at this point.
Have you talked to him lately?
Well, obviously there were efforts to try to gauge his interest, and basically there was no interest, for different reasons. And then the second thing with Maciek, we had the little disagreement at the end of the last window. For us, we moved on immediately. As soon as he decided he needed to leave the team and move on, we moved on. And unfortunately, Maciek was not able to move on from some of the situations himself. And again, when Damian Cooley commits and comes back, then we're really committed to a player like Damian. So we feel like we've got a team that's together, that's settled, and that's really ready for the challenges ahead. Again, let's go back to the main point here. The main point with our national team is we're a team, and we've been successful because we found guys, the players that really want to be a part of it and really want to be here. So if you have a talented player that may be interested in other things, then that's it. We'll make the best of our situation, and I've got a lot of belief in our guys. So we're looking forward to the challenges, and I believe in this team.
Yeah, but with Damian it was like this, that the first tries he resisted going to the national team, but you wanted him badly. What's the situation right now? Is he the part of the team? Is this really cleared off all the things?
Everything is clear. Damian went through a time where he felt like he was done with the national team. He felt like he was retired to spend time with family and do other things. And we basically respected that and gave him space, just like we respected all the other players, and I think that the main point for us around the second half of the season, many of the Torun players became optimistic that Damian was showing more interest to return. And then a great team effort, from President Radek to our coaching staff to our players, especially, let's say, the guys in Torun, Dominic Naroychuk, the players out there. they really created a really positive environment for him. I had after the season, I had a phone call with Damien, and he was very open. We spoke, about a couple points from the past and worked those things through, and we're really happy that Damien is here. He's fit in tremendously well. He's working great, and what I'm impressed with is, how much of the system he remembers and he's really been able to execute. So, yeah, all systems go with Damien. We're really, excited about him and believe in him, and we're really thankful he's back.
Is he a piece? Is he the piece of the team? Because from what I remember, he may be the best scorer of your team in terms of a single game.
He had his last
26
game,
or something.
His last game in Eurobasket against Greece was fantastic. The thing about Damien is he's that front court piece that makes a difference. He's got great shooting ability. He's a low maintenance player. He's always there for the team. So I think he complements Adam Hrtsanyk very well at the 5 spot. And that's, call it is what it is. Damien's contention for most of the time has been he's wanted to play a 5. And because we had a Marcina Gortata, because we had some other players at the 5 spot at the times, we played Damien as both a 5 and a 4. And this was kind of one of the points that I thought he was very happy about was, hey, your role is primarily as a 5 right now. We've got other players at the position 4, and I think he's going to be, a real weapon for our team offensively. So he's fit in great, let's say reassimilated himself great, and really the team is settled, the team is working, the team is focused, and I'm very, very pleased with the players who are here.
We discussed Damien basically because he has a new addition to this team. Aleksander Barcelowski, Jakub Schenk also new additions because all the other players had experience in your team. Are there any chances they are staying with the team because there will be cuts before the first games, before the first tournament?
Yeah, there's chances for everyone, and in particular with Oleg. I love his length. I love his skill. We as coaches were talking. The last time we saw him was when we gave him some experience in Bydgoszcz, just to see what the national team was like, kind of give him a little confidence for the future. And his body is different in 2 years. He's filled out. Mm-hmm. He's working very hard. He's showing tremendous potential. And especially with the injury with Tomasz Giello unable to participate, that kind of opened up an opportunity for Oleg. So Oleg is competing with a couple other players. There's real chances that he can make the team as a 4. Mm-hmm. And he's been impressive. I think it's a really nice moment for Oleg being here in Wybrzeże, his hometown. His father's here with his
also
team.
Practicing.
Yeah, same gym. Mm-hmm. So it's really, I think it's everything has come together at the right time for Oleg. He's done a great job. I've enjoyed talking with him. He's a very down-to-earth, humble, good character person, good family person. So, in terms of checking off all the boxes, we love his first impression here with training camp. With Jakub, Schenk, and some of the other players, the competition is there. I think Schenk has come in after having a really good season and really good couple seasons with Szczecin. I first got a chance to work with him at the B team camp in Gizichko a couple summers ago. Very impressed with him at that point when we played the Belarus B team for 2 games in Białystok. And, it's great to see him establish himself and come in here and be a part of things. He's been very competitive. He's worked very hard. The tough thing for Łukasz Koenda and Schenk, we've got 3 very good point guards that are proven. Mm-hmm. You talk about Łukasz Koszarek, AJ Slaughter, Kamil Wachinski. So with those guys with experience, that position is pretty deep for us at this point. But the experience for these guys to be here is great. The fact that they're here competing for the future is great. And I'm really, we're entering all the competition with an open mind.
Yeah, we're going through the roster basically now at the moment. There's not, I guess there's nothing left to talk about Waczyński, Ponitka, Sokolowski, Gruszecki team because this is your core.
That's the core.
Yeah, so let's transfer this conversation to the big guys. Basically without Lampe, who was the main point under the basket in the qualification round. There's something missing here. We discussed Kulik already. What about these guys, Sulima, Wyka and Olejniczak? How they are feeling your needs here? 3
very good options for us. Let's first talk with Sulima. Krzysztof came into our team after probably being maybe, let's say, off the radar for a few years. When we needed him in the qualification windows, he just fit in perfectly. He really contributed right away. And when we talk about players who put their heart into the team and really want to be here, this is an example of a guy that, you know, for the veteran players who it's routine for them to come here, when they see how important it is to a player like Krzysztof Sulima and how meaningful it is and how he approaches his job on a daily basis, it's refreshing and it's a great message. What I'm impressed about Krzysztof here in the training camp so far is I can tell he's worked on his game because he's playing much more as a 4. So I think for his size, it's a big step forward for him. You know, as a 5 on the international level, he's a little bit undersized. He's smart, he's crafty, he's a hard worker, he's physical. But, you know, when you start talking about playing against 7-foot big men, that's a different story.
6'7",
yeah.
basically.
So, you know, he's improved his three-point shooting. He's moving well within the offense on the perimeter. So I think he becomes, you know, that much more valuable to the team with the position versatility. You know, so Sully's there. He's working very hard. And I think he's got a little extra momentum after his, you know, he's feeling great about the new possibilities with the new team in Wrocław.
2-year contract with the Polish champion.
Well, I think he feels really great about that. So everything's in a good place with Sully. Dominic Olejniczuk, to me, you know, we've tracked him, visited him several times at Ole Miss. Obviously, he's transferred again to Florida State. So he's trying to establish himself at his new school there. Dominic has impressed me with his physicality. He's impressed me with his energy. He's impressed me, you know, defensively. So, you know, as we start to project ahead, you start to look at some of our opponents, that physicality becomes a valuable asset. So for me,
is he 7-footer already? Because
yeah, you know, he's
listed him as a 7-footer.
Yeah, he's filled out, and you know, I'll tell you, in some of our scrimmage games, he's been super physical. You know, just excellent physical screens, excellent physical defense, crashing the boards, doing a lot of the energy things that you know are a great addition. So I've been very impressed with Dominic. Maybe the best part about Dominic is we discovered his nickname. So Dominic is Yogi.
Yogi.
And we're trying to get that Yogi nickname to stick at Florida State as well. So we're trying to help him out a little bit. But no, he's
Yogi Olejniczuk or Dominic
Yogi Olejniczuk. Yogi Olejniczuk. So he's been working hard. He's made a really positive impression. And then again, let's not forget, you know, Darius Vika has great versatility. He can shoot the 3-point shot. He can play some 4. He can play some 5. He's been, you know, in and out of our qualification windows. He's also putting forth tremendous effort. He's working very, very hard. I see him focused and concentrated and trying to pick up the system. I see him working hard defensively. So again, he's really competing to earn a spot as well. So while on paper people would say, hey, you're missing some big men, you're missing a key guy here, I think we've got some real good options that complement our core and complement our team. And in particular, when you start to look at our opponents, Venezuela, China, and Ivory Coast, we've got some guys that bring some assets to the team. They bring that length, they bring that size, they bring that physicality. So we feel like we have enough to work with, and we're really you know, having fun with that.
I guess it's very early to discuss personal decisions, but what everybody assumes is there's a core by 9 players. We didn't mention Aaron Sell and Adam Krycaniuk for these reasons. And the competition is for the remaining 3 spots. Is it something that you have in mind also?
All the time. We evaluate things. So again, you try not to evaluate, make a quick decision over evaluation. You try to track the players throughout the year, follow them throughout their club season, see how they grow, see how they develop, how things improve. You know, maybe a guy is really playing well, maybe a guy is really struggling for one reason or another. You know, so you track them through the season, and then you bring them here to training camp, and you get a look at them working together in the system here. And I think for me, the big thing is to use every moment we can to evaluate the guys, and then, you know, make the best decisions we can with the team. Our coaching staff is really working hard. They're very involved, and I think we'll, you know, sit and have some talks about what we think are the right decisions for our team as we get ready for China.
Are there the healthy proportions? 9 plus 8, 9 sure thing, 8 fighting for the spots. It's something that healthy team has.
Yeah, I think what's interesting about this team is we've seen a core of veterans that really know what they're doing. Like they can execute set plays, details extremely well. They just have to refresh themselves. And then we've got a handful of guys that are really brand new, and they have to learn the system and they have to pick things up. You have some veteran players, but then you also have some really young players. And sometimes these young players really push the veteran players in practice and things like this. So I think we've got a great balance here. I feel like, the decisions will not be easy, but I feel at the same time, we'll work hard to arrive at the right decision for the national team, as we get ready for these big challenges in China.
Okay, can you speak for a while about the coaching staff, because there are also some shuffling in there without Wojtek Kamiński for the first time and a new addition, Marcin Woźniak. Also, Robert Skibniewski is here, only here, or will he stay?
Well, the first thing is we try to be as consistent as we can be with the coaching staff. I felt great about our staff throughout the years. The guys are hardworking, they're loyal, they're really giving their heart to the team, and we all get along and have fun. Wojtek Kamiński has been a big part of our team's success. He's been a big part of the staff. He's helped me tremendously, over the years. I appreciate what he has done. And we supported him as he had the opportunity to go to NBC. I was happy to put in a
NBC Mitteldeutscher Sportclub.
Mitteldeutscher BC. It's a great opportunity for him. I was happy to talk with Martin, the general manager, and put in a good word and tell him, all the good things he's done here with the national team and in Poland for years. So we're very happy for Wojtek in his career step. At the same time, it was a little bit of an adjustment for us. We considered several very good candidates. We considered some, NBA player development guys. We considered some, a variety of people from Poland. At the end of the day, we felt like the right decision was Marcin Woźniak, who has done really good work with Anwil Włocławek the last few years, and he's also done a really good job with our under-20 team. We felt it was the right message for people that, hey, here's an assistant working for the Polish champion, Anwil. Igor spoke very, very highly of him when we talked. And then the second thing is, he's familiar with the federation. He's worked his way up through the system here. So we felt like it was a perfect fit for him.
So there's a message in there.
Yeah, without a doubt.
For the Polish coaches.
Without a doubt. We felt like we took a long time to examine some options, and when we arrived at Marcin, we feel good about it. He's made a tremendous first impression. We're very pleased with what he's done. And, even as Wojtek works on NBC, the possibilities for him to return in the future are wide open. This is not, we're very appreciative of what he's done. And then you fill in those parts with Marcin, a new, hungry coach. And I think we've got a really good situation off the start. Now,
who will have the better team in Bundesliga next year? Hamburg or Mitteldeutsch?
That will be settled on the Bundesliga basketball courts for sure. I think the one thing is he'll know our system pretty well. He'll have us pretty well scouted. So.
Okay. No. Robert Skibniewski.
Yeah, Skiba, is one of my favorite players from the national team. He was our first point guard. He played different roles the first few years. Starting point guard in 2014 helped us, win the qualifications group for
German
2015.
games. German games.
And I was always impressed with him as a floor general, as a coach on the floor. He expressed to me a while ago that, hey, when I'm done playing, I want to get into coaching, and we kind of made an agreement like, what, Skiba, I'm happy to help you. I'm happy to share some information. And I think this is also a good message for former players and players of the national team that we care about them and we want to try to help them grow and develop and improve in their next steps. So
what's his role here?
Skiba is just learning. He's observing. We're spending a lot of time talking about different things. I'm trying to help him get an understanding of a big picture, get some experience. He's made an impact on our player development. He's worked with guys.
He is on the court.
He's on the court. He's helping out tremendously. He's just like an extra pair of eyes, extra hands.
And he's AJ Slaughter so far.
Well, no, he's not played.
He was in the photo.
Yeah, of course.
Uprising with players only.
Yeah. So Skiba snuck in there. I don't know how that happened. He just, he wanted one more team picture, I guess. But no, so he's done a great job. I'm really
Is he a coaching material?
Without a doubt, 100%. This guy is, he's played for a lot of coaches. He's seen the good. He's seen the bad. He's got great experience from different situations. He loves basketball, and I think what impressed me the most about him is his basketball IQ. He understands the game and he thinks the game. So I'm I'm enjoying the time helping him and talking with him, and he's fitting very well with the team and with the guys, which was one of the points that we talked about was he'll help the team, he'll help the environment because the guys know him and like him. So.
But he's here only for
yeah, he as of now he's here for the training camp gaining some experience. I'm very thankful to the Federation for making this possible, and we'll see how things develop. But Marcin has made a great first impression in his time here the first week, and also Skiva. So I feel very pleased about our coaching staff, and we've kind of gotten through that adjustment, I think, very well.
Okay, what can we expect in China? I mean, what is this team ready for in China? Also, I would like you to talk about longevity, because it's very rare, even not for Polish standards, but for European standards, even maybe for American standards too, minus NCAA and NBA, because there's a different story. So you are here for a while. So is it something that we will see in China?
Well, the first thing for China, what we can expect, I've spent a lot of time, and our staff has spent a lot of time working to prepare the scouting reports and the game plan information for our opponents. What we expect from our opponents, number one, Venezuela is a tough, battle-tested team. They like to play bully ball. They've been on the big stage before at Olympic Games. They've got a core that's been together for years. It is aging right now. The Vargas brothers are impact players for them. But to me, this is a team that tries to get right up in your face, and they try to intimidate you and bully you. So for our team, it's about toughness. It's about playing our game, competing. And I think that physicality factor is going to be front and center the first game. China, I was fortunate enough to get out to Las Vegas and scout them live at the Summer League. They've been a very interesting team over the last qualifications for the 2 years. They played basically with two different teams. They played almost 40 players. So it's been really a challenge to track them and kind of get a feeling for what they're going to be. The time in Vegas was helpful, but still they did not play a complete team. I've got some friends who have coached in China who have helped me with some of the personnel. And we've gone to the depths of even, in our team book this year, we have hand signals 1 to 10 in Chinese. I think that the Chinese team is based on set plays, and those set plays are with those hand signals 1 to 10. So we want to try to, pull out all the stops and all the resources we possibly can to be successful.
They have a Chinese coaching staff, or the mixed?
It's basically Chinese, and they've got a few international coaches as well. But in terms of their play on the court,
they are very Chinese.
Yeah, scrappy team, competitive, play fast in transition, really attack you. They have length. They have shooting at all 5 positions. And really, I saw them struggle at times at Las Vegas Summer League, but I also saw them beat the Charlotte Hornets Summer League team. Okay. So we've seen a lot of different looks from them. We'll have as good a clear picture as we can get, especially as we get some of these preparation games over the next month. But China will, obviously that'll be the next big challenge for us, and we'll do our best to know their personnel and know their situation. And then finally with Ivory Coast, again, an athletic team, a physical team, a team that had an amazing run at the end of qualifications in Afrobasket just to qualify. Now they've helped themselves. They've naturalized Adam Wachinsky's teammate from Malaga, Dion Thompson. So he's a playmaker. We'll track them over the next month and continue to get an idea, a deeper feeling for their team and personnel and things like this. But all of the pre-scouts are completed. All the pre-scouts, we're prepared. We actually were guarding in practice. Today's Friday. Thursday night we were practicing against some of these opponents' actions already. So for us, we're doing our homework. We're working ahead, and I'm really looking forward to that stuff in China.
So what's your approach for the practice games? Will it be something that you've done before, that you tried to simulate your opponents with some game time situations, even with the agreement of opponents, or you just play your game and work on your stuff separately on practices?
What we'll try to develop are our lineups. We'll develop our position versatility with our players. We'll try to get the rotation comfortable. So there may be games where we rest a point guard, we rest a big man, and we try to play with different lineups in different situations. But that to me is the most important thing, that we prepare our lineups. To me, that's number one that we can do in these preparation games. In terms of style of play, this is the fun thing about the China and the World Cup is you're playing teams from all over the world, and there's all kinds of different philosophies and styles and things like this. So, in our preparation, we've got a couple teams from Africa. I think there's, maybe that's a good preparation for, let's say.
But are they similar styles to Ivory Coast?
I think Nigeria for sure. Tunisia, Jordan, some of these other teams. Tunisia maybe not so athletic, not so physical, but that's number one. China is difficult to
compare to any.
Yeah, they're because of their length, because of their style of play. So that's kind of a team to itself. And Venezuela, again, any physical team that we've played helps us. The one thing that we can take confidence in is, 5 of the top 8 teams from this World Cup are from Europe, and we've been battling these teams for the last few years. Our team is, we've been through good, we've been through bad, we're a really together group, and I think this is what's going to be our strength as we get to China.
So this longevity, as I ask you, is the gain for this in this department.
Yeah, without a doubt. I've been fortunate enough to be with, several teams for a long period of time. I was 8 years in Ulm, Germany. This is my 6th year with Poland. I think, 4 years as an assistant with the Czech Republic. I think that coaching is a challenging profession. It's dynamic. Things change. I think it's a testament to the positive approach. It's a testament to, being positive and creating a positive environment and being good with people. I'm really proud of what we've accomplished here with the Polish national team. I feel like we've really done, a solid job of improving basketball, improving the national team situation here. Started with positive energy, started with a positive environment. Players really bought in. Great relationships built on the core, and I think this is where the longevity comes in. After we struggled, the one summer we struggled, Eurobasket 2017, we competed well. It was a tough group. We obviously gave the game away against Finland, and we rebounded. We brought it back together through the qualifications. And again, this was the most important thing, is making the decisions, to see who really wanted to be a part of the team. And for us, we found that Polish heart, the heart for the national team. And it paid us back with the great finish through qualifications and the historic achievement to get to the second World Cup in Polish history. So again, I point to the positive attitude, the positive energy, communication skills, being good with people, being good with players. I think this is the key to longevity. And then every single day, not being satisfied, knowing that it's my responsibility to show up and give the players quality, give them quality information, give them quality direction. And really keep pushing the team, towards the potential. So that longevity is something I take pride in. Again, it's definitely unusual, but I'm very thankful to share these experiences with these people here, the players, the coaches, everyone. What the most important thing to me after achieving the World Cup qualification was the fact that players like, Łukasz Koszarek, Mateusz Punika, Adam Wyszynski, all the players, all the coaches, they'll be remembered for doing something really special in Polish basketball, in their history. So, for me,
and we have a book about this.
So this,
we can maybe do a little advertisement.
The fact that
Łukasz
Ceglinski, Marek Ceglinski, these guys writing about the history of Polish basketball, we appreciate it so much. The fact that someone would spend some time, exposing the history of our team and taking a deeper look at the personnel and the people involved. We are so thankful and so appreciative. And to me, again, as I say, it really puts the spotlight on our players. It puts a spotlight on these guys for the rest of their life, that they've accomplished something big in their careers, something significant. And, with this group, with these guys, we want to build on it. We want, we're hungry to push forward and do something big. And I'm just really thankful to share all these experiences with the players and the people. It's been a great, 6 years to this point, and we're on the verge of something really big, in China, and we hope we can really make something happen out there.
So it's past, present, and still. So the question is it the last tournament for Mike Taylor as a coach of the Polish national team?
Oh, for me, the key is when the president and people still want to have me in Poland. I'm really happy to be in Poland. I enjoy the players. I enjoy the situation. I think we've elevated the national team in many ways, and it's improved basketball. It's improved players. There's many positive things that have happened. The only negative time we had was after Eurobasket 2017. We had a lot of success, and now we've gotten ourselves into a great spot. So, for me, the main focus right now is the tournament, is the World Cup.
No decisions made about.
I think there's we both feel good about the future. We both feel great about it, and I think at the same time, the key is how the players respond. When the players will continue to respond to me. And continue to believe in the direction that we're going, then yes, I love to continue. For me, the national team has been a wonderful experience, and I've got tremendous confidence in the future. So, right now what I see is very, very positive, and the big thing is let's make our dreams come true in China, and really have something big to talk about after a great run for the Polish team in Beijing.
About this styles of play. Because I've already talked to Mateusz Ponitka about this, and he said that basically World Championships, or World Cup as we call it, is a little bit easier tournament than European Championship because there are not so many tough teams. Do you agree with this, or you agree that, or you can say that the World Championship is a better tournament, tougher tournament?
No, I will say it like this: that everyone who gets to the World Cup has achieved something. So they have to be quality. I will also say that we can look every team in the World Cup in the eyes, face to face, stare them down, and know we're from one of the best regions out there. 5 of the top 8 teams in this competition are from Europe. We've been battling these teams for 6 years. We've played, all the best teams. And look, people are saying, hey, Lithuania's a favorite. They came from our group. They came from our group. We've played Spain, we've played France, we've played, all Russia, all these top teams. So we can take self-confidence and know we're battle-tested. We've played against good competition. And then it's adapting to maybe one team's more athletic, maybe one team runs more sets, maybe one team is more individually one-on-one.
Are the difference big? Are the difference big? As you can see, China team, you've got more experience than me, for example, and fans. So are the difference big? Just big differences?
Well, I
between
think
the styles of plays, it's totally different basketball that we know.
At times it can be, But I think to me the most important thing is you know your personnel, you know your opponent going into the game. Because basically you got one shot at it. You got 40 minutes, and the results are critical. So you have to know your opponent. You have to really have your team ready to go. And the thing is, some of these teams that we've competed against, whether it's a European Championship or qualifications, they're a certain style, and adapting to a different style sometimes can be a challenge. But if you're planning ahead, if you're prepared, and if you're practicing and you're preparing for these things, I think that gives you an advantage. Our team is really together. Our team is settled. We've been through success. We've been through tough times. And again, we understand our identity. The reason that we are successful is our team play, is our ball movement, is our teamwork, and the fact that we have players who put their heart into this national team, and this is why we've achieved the chance to go to the World Cup, and we're going to rely on that same philosophy as we get to China.
One more thing about this planning: are you already preparing team for Argentina and Russia?
Well, I think that, for example, you don't talk to the guys about things like this. Like even when we defended the actions this week of China, Venezuela, Ivory Coast, you don't tell them it's those plays. You're like, hey, here's some actions you're going to see in the future. Let's guard these.
Okay.
Then when they've seen them, it's easier for them, in the future to react quickly.
Okay, but is your mind in Russia-Argentina games in the second round?
Well, without a doubt, we will have our pre-scout done. So to me, the important thing is you have your pre-scout done for the first round teams, you have your pre-scout done for the second round teams, so that, when you have your work done ahead of time, then the adjustments are quick, the adjustments are easy. So, let's say you have your second round game and you got 1 day to prepare. Well, you can kind of quickly go through 1 or 2 games and compare that to your pre-scout, and then you've got a really good feel, really good read for what your opponent is doing. With Russia, we've played them several times. We have a good feeling for them. So whether it's Russia, Argentina, Nigeria, Korea, the teams that are from, let's say, unique places, these would be the ones that we have to spend a little bit more time on in the pre-scout, just to make sure that we know. Like the ones like Russia, we've played several times, so we have a very good feeling for them. So, but again, first things first, we've got to be ready to go August 31st against a physical, tough, experienced Venezuela team. Then there's the home court for China. We got to play a very clean game and very efficient game against them. And then, the Ivory Coast team, we can't underestimate these guys. We have to respect their physicality, respect their style of play as well. And for me, these three teams, what I like, they're competitive teams for us. We can compete. We have our chances. But we like I say to the guys all the time, we want to be our best when it matters the most, and it's going to matter in Beijing.
These 3 or these 7 teams with your quarter of the tournament are competitive teams to us. Can you say that all 7?
I say all 7. I say all 7 for me. We've played Russia a few times. We've beaten Russia a few times over the last few years. Argentina, obviously, we respect from South America. Have never played them, of course. Yeah. Korea, never played them. Nigeria, again, similar to the, let's say, Ivory Coast team. So again, it's a great draw for us, and it's a draw filled with opportunity. And then, what does that special team look like? What does that special team that goes on that fantastic run look like? In the beginning, you probably don't realize it. You don't understand what it looks like. But I think the key is you have a settled team, a together team, a team that is putting their heart into it and is going to do their very best. And I can guarantee we're going to be really prepared. Mm-hmm. We're going to be really ready, and then hopefully we can write another book about some nice Polish basketball.
Everything is ready for this. Last one is about Lublin game. What should we expect there? What kind of game? Because we would like to invite fans to see.
I'm really thankful that we've got the Lublin game, that we can kind of show off the national team to the Polish fans. This summer, like every summer, our philosophy has been to play tough tournaments away, battle test your team, and then come home for a tournament. Because we decided to go early to China, we talked with some experts in terms of time change and performance in sports, and one of my friends from the USA really, he emphasized, hey, for every hour of time change, you need to be in that country a day ahead. So 7 hours, 7 days. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So this was our thinking to go ahead. And that cut into our time to have some games in Poland. So we prioritized the transition and adjusting time in China. We'll play a few games there. But the game in Lublin, I think, will be fantastic. Lublin, for me, they've been very, very good to us when we've been there. Marek Lemberg and the people have done a great job of hosting our national team for qualification games and things like this. So we're really excited to get to Lublin. I think it's going to be a great moment for Poland basketball, kind of a game to give back to the fans before the journey to China for the World Cup, and I'm really looking forward to it. So we've said that we want to have our team ready by the time we get to Lublin, and from Lublin when we fly to China, August 21st, and I think that it's really going to go fast. Once we leave this training camp, we've got the 3 games in Prague, we've got the 3 games in Hamburg, and then when we get to Lublin, I think it's going to be here before we know it, and then pretty soon we're hopping on that plane for Beijing. So
I know Mike Taylor ceased to use the word excited, but I really would appreciate that you will show some excitement right now and say that you are excited right now at the beginning of the journey to China.
I can't be more excited. For me, the excitement is sharing the experience with the team, sharing the experience with the players. The challenges ahead are big, and we want to rise to those challenges. And I'm just so proud of what we've been able to do together. I'm proud of the players, proud of the team. And hopefully we can write that special story in China. But Yeah, there's a lot to be excited about with our team,
and Mike Taylor is excited.
Of course.
Thank you, Mike.
Thank you. All right, Adam.
Studio Adrom specjalne, długie, będzie trochę tłumaczenia, ale to się wszystko uda. Dziękuję Mike'owi, dziękuję Wam. Do zobaczenia.
Dziękuję.